To train modern foundation models, developers rely on the frictionless ingestion of massive datasets. Foundation models are large-scale AI systems trained on vast amounts of data that can then be adapted for specific tasks like legal drafting or research. The French legal system operates under a conflicting mandate. Article 66(5) of the Civil Code establishes the rule of absolute and perpetual professional secrecy. Information shared between a lawyer and their client is legally required to remain isolated. These two realities create a paradox. Commercial AI relies on data sharing to improve, while legal ethics demand data isolation to protect the client. A common misconception among practitioners is that artificial intelligence is a software utility, a plugin to be installed on a firm's network that will eventually automate the role of the lawyer. In a regulated civil law context, attempting to use a standard AI tool creates an immediate architectural crisis. Feeding a confidential case file into a public algorithm constitutes a breach of the practitioner's oath. To navigate this transition, firms have adopted a paradigm called augmented lawyering. Implementing augmented lawyering requires a rebuild of the firm's physical server networks, its billing structures, and the traditional definition of legal expertise. Mastering this paradox serves as a stress test for the industry. If a system can survive the absolute secrecy requirements of the French bar, its architecture can be adapted to any high-stakes sector where data privacy is a non-negotiable legal mandate. Consider the labor-intensive workflow of M&A due diligence. In a merger or acquisition, lawyers must manually investigate the target company's financial records and legal obligations to identify potential risks. This chart shows a standard due diligence timeline, dominated by mechanical document review. When AI is applied, completion time for this phase drops by 30%. The firm reallocates that bandwidth, expanding hours for strategic assessment and advisory work, providing context software cannot. This disruption ends the traditional billable hour model. Firms can no longer sustain their economics by charging for the raw volume of manual document review. The lawyer's role shifts from a data generator to a supervisory interpreter. They are paid for the judgment applied to the findings, rather than the manual extraction of the findings themselves. AI automates specific mechanical tasks, forcing the lawyer's economic value to move toward strategic decision-making. Transitioning to this model presents an engineering challenge. A firm cannot paste a confidential client contract into a commercial web prompt. This diagram shows a standard web query. An associate uploads a brief to a public AI tool, routing the packet to a remote server cluster. The data is absorbed into a public training pool. This breaches GDPR, the European Union's strict data protection law. The National Bar Council mandates that confidential client data can never become machine training data. To remain compliant, firms must deploy what is known as a sovereign AI architecture. This schematic details on-premise hosting, running software on local servers within the firm. The second pillar is retrieval augmented generation, connecting the AI model exclusively to the firm's internal vault of legal precedents. Finally, zero retention contracts ensure vendors cannot save prompts, scrubbing the data path completely. Raw computational power is useless in a regulated industry without architectural trust. The infrastructure must guarantee confidentiality by design. Rebuilding the technical architecture requires a parallel redesign of the firm's human organization. Traditionally, law firms were organized as rigid pyramids. Partners sat at the top, associates at the bottom, focusing strictly on doctrinal legal expertise. This pyramid fails when algorithmic tools are introduced. A partner trained in the Civil Code may lack the technical expertise to identify a security vulnerability or a data bias hidden within the software. This diagram shows the transition toward a multidisciplinary hub-and-spoke model, flattening the hierarchy. Data scientists and legal operations specialists are inserted directly into the legal workflow, integrating their process expertise. Oversight is provided by a digital ethics referent, ensuring all technology use aligns with professional ethics. The referent audits every AI tool for GDPR compliance and algorithmic bias before it is deployed, acting as a gatekeeper for the firm's liability. For the practicing lawyer, digital literacy becomes a mandatory skill. They must be capable of critically evaluating algorithmic outputs to ensure the software has not missed a nuance or hallucinated a precedent. AI adoption requires more than a software license. It requires a redesign of institutional governance and collective human intelligence. If AI can manage the research, the document review, and the first drafts, the central question of the profession remains: what is the core function of the human? The boundary is defined by the limits of computation. AI models are probabilistic engines. They calculate the most likely sequence of words based on patterns in their training data. The practice of law requires normative judgment, the ability to prioritize competing human values and interpret intent. These tasks exist outside the limits of statistical pattern matching. This diagram shows an algorithmic decision tree halting at a point of moral ambiguity. A machine cannot decide whether a specific legal outcome is just or how to weigh the ethical consequences of a strategic choice. The lawyer's ultimate asset is professional accountability. A machine cannot be held legally liable for its advice, and it cannot take an oath to the court. The augmented lawyer integrates AI insights as one informational input among many. They combine the software's data with their knowledge of the client's specific human context. The final strategic decision, whether to litigate, settle, or adopt a compliance strategy, is non-delegable. The human lawyer retains the burden of legal and ethical responsibility. Augmented lawyering elevates the practitioner from a doctrinal mechanic to a strategic leader who bridges the gap between technology and society. Artificial intelligence does not erode the lawyer's identity. It distills the profession down to its human essence: responsibility.